Now, I want to get a t-shirt that says the New Life logo, and it says, "No perfect people allowed." It kind of, not to be mean, but if you think you've arrived, this probably isn't the place for you, all right? Because we're all sinners. Now, don't be offended by that, okay? I'm a sinner, you're a sinner, we're not perfect. Can we all agree on that, okay? So Paul, one of the greatest Christians, if not the greatest Christian to ever walk the face of the planet, he says, I have not attained. I am not faultless. I have not collected perfection, is what the word means. But he goes, listen, just because I'm not there, and I love the last part, he's like, either we're already perfect. He's like, I think you guys know I'm not already perfect. Like, I'm in process. I'm working on me. But then he turns a corner after saying, hey, listen, we've all sinned. We've all messed up. And he turns a corner and he welcomes the people in the letter who are a part of the family of God. We've talked about this word before. He says, adelphos. He said, brethren. Brethren, I count not myself to have apprehended. He's like, brethren, listen, we're all sinners. But then he narrows it down and he says, but some of us have been welcomed into the family of God. Now, I've mentioned this a few times in church, and I had a few people confused by it, so I want to make sure I'm very clear. That everyone on the planet is stamped with the image of God. Meaning, when the moment you were conceived in your mother's womb, the image of God, you are an image bearer, okay? But in our quote-unquote Christian society, if you want to call that still, there are a lot of cultural Christians, meaning they grew up around God, hearing about God. They grew up just sitting in church like this, or they feel like they're a Christian because they gave once, or they went to church once, or they like Christian values. All of those things are good things. But an invitation to be in the family of God comes in John chapter 1 and verse number 11 when he says, he came into his own and his own received him not. Verse 12 says, but as many as received him, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God, the daughters of God, even to them that believe on his name. So he gives an invitation for adoption. He welcomes you into his family, but he's not going to force you into his family. Why? Because love requires volition. You have to have a choice. If when I was dating Danielle, I forced her to date me, that would be weird. It would be creepy, and she should call the police. Why? Because love offers a choice. We all know that inherently. So when God offers you a choice into his family, 2 chapters later in John 3, he tells the most religious person on the planet at that time, Nicodemus, had the entire Old Testament memorized. If that's you, come talk to me after church. I want to meet you. But Nicodemus, a guy who had all the religious accolades, way more than me, way more than you, he said, Nicodemus, you must be born again. Meaning you must have a moment where you choose to enter into the family, not by your own merit, but by my grace. And so the reason why this is so important is because everything he says after this, he's saying it to people who've had that moment where they've received Jesus Christ and they've been welcomed into the family based on who God is. Listen, my boys they weren't born into the family because, I was, they were this really, really good baby, so I decided to love them. How weird is that? God's love is towards you. And this is what the Bible says in Romans 5:8, that God commendeth his love towards you, and that while we were yet sinners, we were imperfect, Christ died for us. And so listen, Christ loves you unconditionally, but he loves you enough to give you a choice. And when we come into that choice, now we have the choice of how we're going to live in the family.